Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Dale, the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Mount Pleasant. I'll be conducting our meeting this evening in the absence of the mayor. I'd like to welcome everyone to our November 8th special call meeting. At this time, I will ask Council Member Adams to lead us in a word of prayer, followed by Councilwoman Rule to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand? Thank you, Council. I'll call this meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda tonight is to hold a public hearing and consider approval of ordinance 2022-20 for the request from Juan Mata, applicant and owner, for a zoning change for SF2, which is a single-family district resident in Mount Pleasant City Block, City of Mount Pleasant, Titus County, Texas, and generally located in the northeast corner of Otyson Street and West Cash Street, 1137 Cash Street to be exact, Z-2022.05. And at this time, I'll welcome you to brief the council on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, and Mr. Thatcher as well. As you recall, this meeting, we on the 18th of October, this particular item was tabled due to the notice not being sent and proper notification for this. Staff has sent forward the proper notification as far as newspaper notice. We did mail out additional property owner notifications to all folks within 200 feet as well too, and complied with all state statutes. With that being said, the property, as you can see, is located right here on the southeast corner of Otyson and Cash Street. And let me go to the next. It's currently zoned single family 2 for residential uses. And essentially, and I'll just go over this briefly since we discussed this at the last meeting, the applicant did come forward, and what he's requesting to do is to change the property from a single family 2 district to a neighborhood services district, and that's for the purpose of having a grocery store at this facility, as well as a food preparation, tacos, burritos, that sort of thing. But I think one thing that we certainly want to make clear was that the primary use on this is going to be a grocery store. The secondary would be the food preparation with that. And now the one thing that the future land use plan does indicate on this is that the use itself is compatible with the recommendations of the future land use plan. Once again, number of issues with the site that the applicant will have to bring up to code, but the one thing that we did talk about was the parking, and that's one item that the applicant will be required to do is go before the Board of Adjustments to seek a variance not only to the parking for head-in parking, but possibly for the number of parking spaces as well, based on the size of the structure. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did review this in their meeting on October the 11th. They're forwarding a recommendation of approval for this. This is a discretionary decision for City Council as well. We did mail out, like I said, the notices, 21 notices did go out. On the updated notices that we just forwarded, we have not received any notices back from the updated notice. However, the three that were received earlier in the October meeting, we did have 2 that are in favor of the request and 1 that is not in favor of this request. With that, the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have with that. Staff is available as well too, and this is a public hearing.
I just have a quick question, David. Based on the current square footage of that building, what would be the current parking required today before he comes to try to, address that issue?
Yes, sir. So the approximate size of the square footage of the building is about 1,350 square feet. And so a grocery facility would require one parking space per 200 square feet. So that's approximately 7 parking spaces to be required.
This is a public hearing, as David stated. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to ask any questions, or would Mr. Mata like to add anything? I think the translator is here. Or do we have any questions or concerns from the council?
I think after we went through this the other day, I think there was just some miswording. Is the only reason we had to bring it back up. I think the 7 parking spots was the only thing that we kind of discussed, maybe having to get a variance on. Personally, I'm for taking anything like this building that's on the screen here, anything that upgrades it, makes it look better, gets some neighborhood services going in that area would be a positive, and I think I personally am interested to see this proceed forward.
As David stated, the city council approved a motion to table the item on the October 18th meeting, just for the fact that there wasn't a notification of a public hearing that was on that item, so that's why it had to be put on this agenda here, basically why we're having this special meeting tonight, try to get this expedited for Mr. Mata. So if we don't have any other comments or questions from the public, I'll close the public comment section of this meeting. At this time, I'll open the floor for a motion to consider the approval of 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-20 for the request by Juan Mata.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Adams and a second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, would you record the vote, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Council. It was approved unanimously. We'll move on to item number 2 on our agenda, which is to hold a public hearing to consider approval of ordinance 2022-21 for the request of Augusta G. Breerin, applicant owner of a zoned change from general retail district to a neighborhood service district of a 0.48 tract of land described as the J.R. Mitchell Survey, abstract number 384, Titus County, Texas, and being a part of that called 3-acre tract of land recorded in volume 392, page 2 of the deed recorded, Titus County, Texas, same being all the recorded 0.48 acre tract of land conveyed to Rance Austin Craig and recorded in clerk file number 20134600 of the said 0.476 acres of Mount Pleasant, Texas, Titus County, and generally located on the southeast quadrant of US 271 and FM 1734, which is 2231 North Edwards Avenue, Z-2022-06. We'll welcome David back.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the location, as you can see, as you've indicated, it is on the 271 and North Edwards Avenue, and it's actually for clarification, if you take a look at the north of the property is the Mount Pleasant Independent School District. That's their offices there, as well as the bus barn. The property is zoned general retail district currently, and the purpose of the rezone for this is the applicant has a potential buyer for this property. The home was constructed in 1976, and the titling company is taking a look at this, and because it's zoned general retail district, they're concerned that if something happens to the property, if it was demolished for any reason, that they cannot build back on that lot. And the reason is because general retail will not allow for that to happen. So the applicant is requesting to rezone that to an appropriate zone that would allow for that, and that would be the neighborhood services district. Our comprehensive plan, the future land use plan, indicates this particular area as a commercial center, essentially characterize that as, commercial type of structures within that area, but it also has secondary land uses that will support the residential land use that the applicant is requesting. So with that, the applicant's request is compatible with the future land use plan for this property. There's a image of the property as it sits now. The property that's adjacent to it is for sale as well too, so that's a vacant property. With this, we did send out notifications as indicated from the other with the updated notices as well too. In the first meeting, or the first round, we did send out 4 notices. We didn't receive any notices back at that time. And that'll be the same here with the 4 updated notices. No notice have been received for that as well. P&Z, Planning and Zoning Commission, did take a look at this on October the 11th, and they did forward a recommendation of approval, and once again, with council's discretionary decision on your part as well too. With that, I'm available to answer any questions that you may have concerning this request.
Council, do we have any questions?
I believe last time, didn't we have the couple here and we were trying to get the closing done and they needed this to get closed? Isn't that what the situation was?
Yeah, the applicant is trying to get this taken care of, and so they are aware of the timeline associated with this as well.
David, let me ask you, I mentioned to Robert last week, but so this is zoned what? It's,
the current zoning is general retail.
and so we're gonna take this lot, and draw a circle around it, and zone it something different.
The lot will be the only thing that'll be changed on that to a neighborhood services district if that is approved, yes.
So can you explain why this isn't spot zoning?
In the case of cumulative zoning in this respect, the zoning that we have in here is cumulative zoning, and because the neighborhood services district is part of a commercial type of use, because it allows for retail in there as well, I don't believe that you would be moving forward with that. Once again, I may pass that on to Carrie, city attorney, to verify that as well.
So, so the owners of this, they're gonna close on it and they're gonna turn it into a business. It's not gonna be a residential dwelling.
My understanding is to remain a residential dwelling.
And Robert, did you tell me today that we don't have a cumulative zoning?
No, there is some cumulative zoning the way it works. Some of if you started a neighborhood service, then when you go up to retail, those services carry over. Some of that happens in some of the residential, where some things are allowed. Happens to be that residential, single-family residential is allowed in the neighborhood service district, which is kind of a cumulative thing. These districts aren't really standalone. They kind of cumulative. As far as the reference to spot zoning, it's always been, in my interpretation of that is, when you spot zone something, that what you're doing, if you're granting somebody a use or granting something that wouldn't be granted to any other property owner in the surrounding area, then what you've done is you have created a spot zone that would essentially be given a privilege to that particular property. In this case, neighborhood service is a commercial type of zoning district, but the only differential between that and really the only differential between that and the general retail is that the neighborhood service was intended to be more adjacent to residential, and it does allow a residential dwelling to be built in that district. So it's one of those transitional zonings, so I would not call that specifically a spot zone. If it was completely the other way around, if we were in the middle of a single-family residential district, and right in the middle of that single-family residential district, we wanted to drop a general retail zone in the center of it, then I would say, yeah, that's absolutely a spot zone. But in this case, this is transitional zoning. It's already completely zoned general retail all around it, so this isn't really doesn't represent that sort of the phrase spot zoning in my opinion.
Let me ask you then, so I asked just a minute ago, David, so you just said that the rest of it around it is gonna have the same privileges as this one lot does, but I thought I heard David say, no, that this new zoning will only apply to that lot. It won't be everybody else gets it.
Well, the only privilege, which is is the residential. It's not and we're saying that basically we're not taking from any other existing property owner out there, we're taking any commercial right that they already exist out there away from them. The only thing that gives this property owner the ability to do is to maintain this non-conforming, it will not be non-conforming. We're taking the non-conformity away from it because what has happened, the city, whenever they annexed the property, if they brought the property in and then changed the zoning to GR, which is somebody did this. So we created a nonconformity on that house that's sitting out there for years. So in a sense, just for kind of making a reference to it, in a sense, the city, by zoning it, actually created what would be that single non-conforming use out there. When we did that, we brought it in. Not, and probably with good reason, because we felt as though that was transitioning, and those properties eventually, the single family would probably go away, and most of them have out there. But this one's not gonna go away anytime in the future, so.
Let me ask you, if it burned down or it was vacant for a year, they could still rebuild it as a residential under this new zoning. And if it's set vacant for a year, they could go back and if they need to remodel it and have it as a residential. And the one next to it, they couldn't decide, I want a residential house here and build it, or can they?
No, they can't. They can't. So we, in that logic, I guess you could consider it that they have a privilege of rebuilding the house.
I gotta tell you, Robert, for you to say that, it makes me feel smart.
But the other side of the coin is that I'm saying that we've created the nonconformity out there, and it's nobody's to fault by any means, but the financial institution, that's an investment. They're backing this house up, and if it, like David had said, if it burns down and they can't rebuild it, then they're faced with a loss. Somebody's faced with a loss, and they're not willing to finance it for that purpose. So that's the downside of it at this point.
Extend this zoning to everything out there then, so that they're all, has the same privilege.
Well, you know, that's case in point. If somebody comes back into us and we've established this process to do this, at this point we've established a process to where if somebody else came in out there and wanted to build a home out there, and we wanted to consider that, then we'd have the ability to consider that. It wouldn't be, I don't think it'd be precedent setting if we did that. We're at the spot zone, we're not essentially taking away the existing zoning privileges from the existing zoning folks out there. And then we're given a pathway. If somebody else wanted to come in and ask for it, we're giving them a path to do it.
Now, something to think about though, on that location where this house is, everything around it's pretty much commercial. You got the backside of Lowe's there, you got the dance academy, like you said, you got the admin building across the street, you got the funeral home, you got a gas station on the corner, you got Roberts AC. So everything right there is commercial pretty much. So is this what we really want to do for long-term future growth of, because everything's developing commercial there. I'm just asking for discussion purposes.
On the coin flip of that, you've got a house that you can't sell unless it's neighborhood services. So just say that you do the neighborhood services where the house is legally zoned correctly, that we caused the incorrect zoning to begin with. Neighborhood services, if they could sell it in the future to somebody that was wanting to put a store or something like that in, that would transition into what you would normally take, but you don't want to take the ability for somebody to sell a piece of property away from them. You don't want to take that away. I mean, I think that.
Well, Ed, since you and Kara are more familiar, can you explain the legality of this spot?
Again, we're talking, Robert, the way he explains it, he's saying it's really not a spot zone. But if it is a spot zone, it's illegal. You can't do a spot zone, and so you can't do it. My question is the property owner, if they sold it commercial or whatever, they get more money on that property than, it's not like if we don't let them have the house in perpetuity, whatever, that they can't sell it as not a house kind of thing. But I don't have a problem. It's an older home, and as long as they, if they want to stay there forever in the home, that's fine. I just want to make sure the zoning is appropriate. And Robert,
and we talked about this. There was a point in time when I worked at another city. We had a strip area. We had old houses on it. the houses were transitioning. It was on a major thoroughfare, and nobody wanted to live there after a while, but some people did want to live there. So we actually created a hybrid zoning district called residential office that allowed for some commercial neighborhood service type uses, and to be established, and with the ability to continue to have a residential home there. And that worked out pretty well. And we didn't have the problem of, whether you could have a house there or not. And that made that transition. Actually, those properties increased in value because they could transition them to businesses and they still have homes there.
Robert is really creative that way, and what he's done there in those cities, he's done that in, it's really nice, and it's on the road kept getting widened and widened, and it was more commercial. And so they've turned these old homes into businesses and so forth. My only thought is, but all of that is the same zoning. It's not just one of them zoned and the rest of them. That's all my point.
And we probably, I agree with you on this one. I guess this was a sort of a creative thing on our part to try to figure out how we could salvage these folks, because they'd already sort of bought this house, and the financing people weren't going to close on it without some backup, that said that they could actually rebuild the house that would be burned down or torn down. So, and again, it's strictly up to the city council if they want to do this.
I honestly see this as you've got a young family that is buying an existing house that is in close proximity to a school system. That will work for them. I don't see the loophole of the residential being allowed in there. Neighborhood services isn't a bad thing. It's not spot zoning. This isn't spot zoning. It's just in neighborhood services, residential is allowed as well. And I just think that the city, if you see a young family striving to achieve what most of us consider to be the American dream, why would we question the ability to do that? So I think I'd like to give you guys a kind of a kudo for helping them achieve that goal.
And I'm sorry that I'm questioning this. As you said, I don't know why anybody. If we extended the neighborhood services up and down both sides of the street, then I would agree with you. But when we just take one house to do it, it seems like that's the spot.
And my question was, President, something else?
Let me ask Kerry, do you have anything to add to this on the legal end of it that you heard tonight?
I understand what Ed's saying on spot zoning, but I'll give you a good example. I think the two words that I always think spot zoning, consistency and then transitioning. We faced that years ago out on the south end of town, out there from basically where Brahms is out. The same issues out in there transitioning from, and you've got to, sometimes you got to start somewhere on it, but it's pretty consistent, the use. So, traditionally spot zoning would be just these guys coming in and just saying, well, this is it's not even consistent with what is around you. We just carved out this, whatever. So, I think that passes much, but we ran into these same problems, but we had these same questions out there as that grew on the south end of town, really probably from about Brahms back south. These same questions. Well, it's not new, but it is transitioning, but it is consistent with what's around it. And I'm assuming that the zoning, there's no opposition, right? No opposition, so you can take that into consideration. So that's really my opinion, more from experience anyway. Courts are the ones that decide what is spot zoning, but it doesn't seem to bleed over into that, in my opinion.
I think, Kerry, it's like from Kentucky Fried Chicken south. There's some big homes there.
But out of fairness, these same questions, these are the same questions that got asked years ago about what happened.
I just, for clarity's sake, so if the new buyers buy this and we rezone it to neighborhood service district, and then down the road they decide to put it up for sale, or someone comes to make them an offer and say it's a business, then the business can come in, tear the house down, build their business, and have no issues with having to get it rezoned again, correct?
That would be correct. Yeah, it depends on the use as well, but yes.
Okay, we've had some good discussion on this. Do we have any other questions or comments? This is a public hearing, from the audience, or any other council member have any suggestions or questions? If not, I'll close this, public hearing, and at this time, I'll open it, the floor for a motion.
I move that we approve this request for the August for Randy.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilman Walker and second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, would you record the vote, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you, council. It was approved unanimously. But this time, we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is to the discussion and consider a request from John Scribner from Mount Pleasant CFA Series LLC for the approval of a replat of a 2.085 acre tract of land that is part of the Berry Merchant Survey Abstract Number 358, Titus County, Texas, being all that tract conveyed to the Lamb's Fold, Volume 800, page 71 of the deed records of Titus County, Texas, together with a part of the tract conveyed to the city of Mount Pleasant in volume 299, page 135, deed recorded in Titus County, Texas, and generally located at the northwest corner of the intersection of US Highway 271, which is North Jefferson Avenue, and US 67 East 16th Street, city of Mount Pleasant, Texas, RP-2022-04. And we'll welcome David Gonzalez back, Director of Development, to discuss this.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So the property that we're looking at here, I gotta get you these buttons. The property that we're looking at here is obviously city-owned property. You've got the EDC here and the Economic Development Corporation, and Chamber of Commerce rather, and then the church here. And this is going to be a request to replat this as a conveyance plat, and that way that the property owner can go ahead and work on getting the closing of this particular location, and this obviously for the proposed Chick-fil-A site. And so once they go through the closing and start construction, then you'll eventually see this come back to you in the form of a final plat for the necessary easements and fire lanes and so forth on that. But it's a simple plat request here for this, and I'm available for any questions that you have.
Okay, council, do we have any questions concerning this replat? Thank you, David. So if we have no questions, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion concerning this request.
I'll move the approval of the replat from John Scribner for the Mount Pleasant CFA Series LLC.
I will second that.
We have a motion from Councilman Adams and second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, would you record the vote, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you, council. It was approved unanimously. At this time, we'll move on to item number 4 on our agenda, which is the discussion and consider approval of a performance agreement by and between the Mount Pleasant EDC and Grow Bounty Northwest LLC, and approve the execution of any and all documents regarding the conveyance of approximately 39.771 acres of land in the Cypress Industrial Park to Grow Bounty Northwest LLC. So at this time, Mr. Nathan Tafoya will make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thatcher, Deputy Mayor, and Governing Body. Just going to read some of the item summary from your packet. The IDC is pleased to present the following project to City Council for final approvals. Under the codename Project Veggies, this project came to the IDC in late 2021 through the Governor's Office, and then they went silent for a few months, and then resurrected under a different project manager in March of 2022. The City of Mount Pleasant has been selected as the location for a future commercial greenhouse for Project Veggies, which is an agritech company. Expected investment levels will exceed 20 million, and that is specifically tied to real property. That's the director of real estate who you met a few weeks ago, Matt Adams, has said that that investment level is right around in the $85 million range. Phase 1 square footage build footprints will exceed 500,000 square feet, and new jobs created will range from 20 to 60 over a 5-year build out and about 3 phases. The company will purchase 39.771 acres out of the Cypress Industrial Park with your approval, and financial impact is $100,000, which the EDC is committed as part of its performance agreement with the company. And we recommend to approve, and I stand for any questions.
On the $100,000, Nathan, what will that go toward?
The way the agreement is structured is it's for qualified investments and infrastructure improvements, and it's a reimbursable set up as a reimbursement. So they'll document that and provide that to us, and we'll reimburse.
Is the location, is it suitable? I know they use lots of water. Is that fair to say? From what I gathered in my, I know I was involved in a quick meeting with them there probably a couple months ago when they was in town.
So, yeah, we've heard a number, Lanny's in the room, we've heard a few different numbers from them on, depending on how their process is set up and if you're doing it per minute, per day. The last we were told this week was about 26,000 to 30,000 gallons per day. And we've heard a few things from the engineering group, but they're still nailing a lot of those things down. If it kind of helps, the company is based in the Montana, Wyoming area. It's a publicly traded company, and they've purchased some companies, like in the California region, and they are currently building in, I believe, another state, and in this one in Texas. And so the genesis of doing massive multi-state large developments, and as he mentioned last time, this is their largest footprint for these greenhouses. You know, their engineering group is still pulling the numbers and running the calculations on what they're going to need to do all the greenhouses at full build out and at ramp up.
So on this 26 to 30,000 gallons per day, that will be water that will all that be purchased from the city?
So the company has said that is not sole source. They would like a water well. They also collect a lot of rainwater, and they recycle that through their processes. And they said they will be using city water. It'll be a mix of about 3 different sources, as they've told us.
Do we know what percentage of that?
We do not.
Do we know if does our sewer system, I don't know, I'm just thinking, when that water is reused, I'm sure they reuse a lot of that water, I'm assuming.
We don't know exactly the amount that they recycle and they reuse and they were able to repurpose, but the city has very strong regulations and codes that are pretty standard about what they can put back into the system and what the city's willing to take, and they're highly aware of those, and they've worked with Lanny and a few of us in a number of meetings to address that.
Well, that was my question, was just to make sure that they was aware of what regulation has to be met through the wastewater and how it has to be balanced, for lack of a better term in y'all's language, to be able to go through there without it being a TCQ issue or something like that. I think if we could fairly quickly kind of know, I think it'd be good for us to know what part of the water that they would be needing out of that 26 to 30,000 gallons a day would be used from the city versus the rainwater. How do they capture that? And they have
they will build a cistern that'll collect the rainwater and hold it maybe underground. I don't know exactly how that works. And we talked to them about if they use it, but then they put it in our sewer system, how will we know how much they're doing it if it's not that part of our water? They indicated they would have some kind of metering on there that will tell us how much they're putting in the sewer system. The other thing they talked about possibly, they may not put a lot of it in our system. They're looking at maybe having a, what's it called, a reverse osmosis thing, and they'll sprinkle it on the ground. They have to get that permit. That's a TCEQ thing and stuff. They may put it on the ground. So a lot of those questions haven't been answered, but Lanny has been working with them. And so tying down how much water they'll buy from us, how much they'll have there, and then how will we treat it and how will we take it. We do have standards. By the way, we have a 1978 ordinance that says what the limits are. We need to ramp that ordinance and put it in place so that we make sure that it's correct. If anybody wants to, if they go over, there's a fine for them. And a lot of times, as we visited with one, they say, we just soon pay the fine, $75 a month fine, than to pay the money to clean it. You know, we go, well, we don't want your fine. We want you to not give it over the limit kind of thing. But they're looking at a lot of different alternatives, so we'll just have to work with them, make sure that it's what we need to do. Now, we have indicated that we're going to have to, it's kind of a little Band-Aid sewer system out there with some grinder pumps for Diamond C and a lift station that's under sized with what they're going to give us. Of course, we don't know exactly, but we believe what they give us is going to push us into a situation where we need to upgrade the lift station and the force main to the sewer line. So, and that's about a $2 million project. And it's not just because of veggies, but it's for the area. But it's that has put us into needing to do it. So it'll probably be a project that Nathan and I, or EDC and us, work together with to get that resolved.
One of these type of products before?
Yes, I've been in a place where there's food product industries, yes. I worked where one of them got it approved to sprinkle on the ground, and that's, if I remember, it's probably a lot easier now than it used to be. It wasn't all that easy to do before, but we do want to, but in other cities where I've been, we had a monitoring weekly or bi-weekly or whatever in these systems to make sure that they weren't giving us a hazardous load into our plant, because we don't want to kill our plant, and that could do it, or our lift station. So we have to make sure the constant monitoring on them that make sure it's okay. And it's normal and customary to have them and do it. There's a prescribed way to do it, and we just need to do it.
Ed, would the lift station project factor in future growth as well, not just this project?
I asked about how many more acres we have out there. I don't know.
It's about 16.
But it will make what's out there now a real sewer system. Because you got a big industry like Diamond C using a couple of grinder pumps to get their water to a lift station, and that would be solved with this.
Would there be any chance that they might need any more property, or do they pretty much know that 39 acres is pretty much what they need, Nathan?
Yes, sir. So they've said they have a small little bit of buffer and a drainage area, and like I said, this is their max footprint that they have currently in build outs, and so they planned it. Their phase 1 is only 500,000 square feet. At full build out, at phase 3, it's over 800,000 square feet.
The average on these jobs per hour, do we know that?
No, the company currently uses, and it was just one of their outside baselines. They use there's an MIT wage scale, and it's by state and county, and so they've said they'll do that. Prevailing wages, of course, to be successful, they'll match up with local rates.
So they're going to pay us what MIT guys make.
I will say this, so I've had an opportunity this week to talk to a few people about this. Lanny was, we were in some discussions, and Lanny was, let them know pretty quick that, with the leach field, that was TCEQ stuff, that they would have to meet those standards, because that would be our standard, would be what TCEQ said. And they said they understood that. He also told them that basically you can't take your, roughly your harshest water and put on us and put the fresh water on the leach field. You have to mix in enough fresh water so our harsh water isn't so toxic that we can't handle it. He explained that to them. So, they're supposed to get with him, finish up, letting him know what the exact numbers are on their flow per day and stuff like that. And so I'm confident if he is, that he can work with their people and obviously knows who they are and has contact with them. I think that we've got that mostly under control. As far as the sewer upgrade out there, I think Nathan has expressed that there's some grants and stuff like that available for that kind of stuff. Of course, we will try to get as many of them possible, but I'm sure anything that we can't get handled through grants, IDC would be more than happy to team up with us to help us share that cost.
And again, the $2 million project was, so like I said, we've had a range of what those flows are going to be, and at the very high ones, there's massive upgrades that need to get to that $2 million level, depending on where those conversations. Again, talking about the money share, but absolutely, of course, we're here to serve and help.
How this is a little, obviously, a little variation from how we normally meter water sales, and we use to sell the water and bill them accordingly for their sewer services. I understand that they can have certain meters to measure rainwater and or well water. There'll be another bunch of people running things in a few years when this is actually up and running at full capacity. But how do we do something like this to guarantee that we need to be in charge of those meters, just like we're in charge of our city water meters now. We install them, we maintenance them, we're responsible for their accuracy. And I'm not comfortable just trusting, and there's nothing against this entity, it's in general, trusting someone to take care of our meters for us. Is this something, Carrie, that we would need to include in a contract a little bit more specifically about, since they're going to have other sources of water other than what we sell to them that they need to send back to us through a sewer system? Do we need to address that now to nail it down as to how that's going to work and how that will be monitored for accuracy?
Well, sure, if that's an issue, if it's an issue with you, then now's the time to do it. But it seems like there's some other, we just got to work them out as we go here. So, but if it is, now's the time to take care of it. But what I was thinking, as far as, don't we meter out like off Harts Bluff on that sewer line? Don't we meter at one time? Didn't Tri-Water or whatever meter for us out there in using that? It's been a while. You water and sewer out there. Okay, so that's how that's metered out there. I remember that issue came up years ago, and that's how we do it out. That's how we've always done it out there, right? Okay. So we have Tri-Water as an independent verifier on that. So, Sherry, all I can tell you is it seems like there's some issues in this one that the engineers are going to have to resolve. But if this is one that's an issue with you, now's the time to address it for them. That's the best I can tell you. It's not included in this performance agreement, or anything like that. It's not included, but you can, you can certainly ask for it and tell them.
As Gary said, that now's the time we need to work out. And we really, if it was a perfect world, we'd have all this water usage and wastewater usage nailed down, so it'd be part of it. But when we get that done, I think we need to come back and have another service agreement or something passed that says this is the way it's going to be. We'll be working on it with them, and they'll be telling us what they need. And that seems like it's changing from time to time. when we get it nailed down, I think we should come back and amend or have another water, wastewater service agreement.
What I don't wanna see happen in the future, Nathan, and everybody else that's concerned, and I'm not trying, I want this to be able to, I wanna pull this together. But one thing I've learned on the council after 3 years, there's so many things that were put in place in the past. And then it's time for decisions now. And none of us hardly, very few of us, Carrie, were active then in some years past. And now we've got new issues. And then what are we gonna do? Let them invest $50 million and say, we've got a real problem here, you know, and are we gonna stop their operation? These sort of details may be like in the weeds for some, but they're real to me. And water and sewer issues are a big part of the city function. They're a big responsibility. There's TECQ, this, that, and they can come in, and I don't want to prevent this. I just want to make sure that these nuances have been addressed and that they have a clear understanding what they're gonna need to do and able to participate with our sewer system, you know, and discharge their water. And we need to be able to monitor that accurately, I believe, to know how many gallons we're receiving. And like to Galen's point, make sure that we're not just getting their nastiest water, that we are getting it in such a fashion. I don't know enough about the water treatment standards and how you test it and how often and all that, but I can see where it could be an issue.
So Anthony and Lanny have done a really great job of explaining that to them. They've laid out the ordinance. Their engineering team knows what they're willing to take, and I think all those have been very, very clear to them. I think the some oversight will fall under TCEQ if they're the ones allowing them to have the permit as well. But I've kind of, just so you know, Matt Adams is watching, and he's just said he can stand by if we need to talk to him. But I've been texting him, and he did say that they're happy to add a monitoring component. They have no problem metering and allowing City Public Works to review the metering. They're happy to comply. I think there's a general good faith effort to be good neighbors and to work with the city.
Anthony, do we have anyone else in town that we or any other business that we do this with? I know it's all tied with water or sewer, so this would be an exception here because they're using rainwater and using well water. So common sense tells me there's going to be a lot more water go back into sewer than what water that they get from our system. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, sir, you're correct. We don't do anybody else like this. Everybody's tied. Most of the ones that we have are tied to the city sewer. I mean, city water that flows to the city sewer. But just to put your mind at ease, they do make a flow meter that we can put right before the discharge goes into the manhole, and so we can monitor. They can have their own meter, and we can put our own meter, and we can still monitor in the flow of the sewage. And it will take care of all the water that, I mean, even the city water they use through the meter, it'll monitor the whole thing, so you can get it all.
Nathan, I would think that this company, do they do this in other locations with their well water and rainwater also? Is this customary for them to use?
I believe so. I don't know that I've asked that specific question, but
They did say yesterday that they have 3 water source. They need that for their system, the cistern, the well, and the city's water. And they said the only reason, or one of I guess the reason they liked us is because they could have a well. So other cities they talked to, the state wouldn't allow them to. So that's one of the reasons they picked us. The only city in Texas they're going to have a plant. So I think it's safe to say they do this in their other.
And I think another way of really looking at it too is diversification of the industrial tax base here. So we've also never had an industrial greenhouse in Mount Pleasant. So as those issues come about, and maybe us not even being aware, or as it comes online as an agri-tech company and as innovative agriculture becomes a thing, when we're kind of used to big tractors and lots of acreage, and now being consolidated, the turnaround times, I believe from the video, was around 24 days. I mean, there are going to be multiple robots roaming inside of these things to harvest. It's so, you know, understanding as agriculture advances technologically, understanding as that comes to Mount Pleasant, we're having 800,000 square feet of growing space. Just knowing that a particular issue for a specific kind of industry, you know, we have a lot of electric users, a lot of gas users because of powder coating operations, a lot of electricity. We know SWEPCO, we know, you know, CenterPoint Energy, we know those guys really well in this community. We know one really big water user, but it's a different kind of water user. And so, one way to kind of appreciate, I think, at least I do, is the diversification of all the industry that's kind of coming to Mount Pleasant.
So along with the, monitoring the water flow, do we have a way in real time to monitor the contaminants? Or do you have to go out and get physical samples every time we wanna verify what they're putting back in the system?
It's been a while for me, but it's called pre-treatment program. And they actually do make flow meters that will monitor pH and different solids in the water and stuff of that nature. So you can buy them to do all that.
So will that be on them to put that in? Would that be one of the requirements? I think maybe what council members Rule and Chappelle is asking, would that be something that they're willing to do? They understand that'd be a process. And I guess with that I'd add, with other states, would it be fair to say this is the only location that they've done wells in? And I would think the wells would be a cost-effective measure for them naturally.
Well, one of the things Lenny, and I'm not even speaking to this, this is hypothetical, but I had mentioned yesterday, was about when the city gives water, it's treated, has chlorine in it, they might have to untreat it to put it on plants. And then, you know, I mean, it could actually be more costly from an operational standpoint. So the using more raw water and all that is part of their process. Again, they're using reverse osmosis. There's certain things that they want to clean but still leave in. It's just a part of how they're going to do things. And I think because I think it's actually a competitive advantage to be able to monitor and have the capability to offer a company like this. I think some of the questions we're asking, Matt's kind of blowing me up. On a text message, not blowing me up, but he's just saying, absolutely, we want to be good neighbors, happy to do the metering thing. I think there's an open door of transparency in the process, and I think just qualifying that whenever you guys do set up the special use permit, just say, hey, we want to do this and this, and he's willing to do that. I mean, he's online. I'm saying this on the phone. He's texting me while we're doing this, so they're willing to do that, and so I hope that would put those to rest, those concerns.
I will say, like I said, when we sat in on the meetings, he said multiple times that they want to be very transparent. They want to be good neighbors. That they would work with Lanny, their engineers, and Lanny could work together to understand the process and understand what they needed to do. That's not. That was the utmost of his importance to get across to us. And I think some of this is like Nathan has said. This is their first fresh build, I believe, or of this size. And so I think some of it is an unknown even to them. And it's something that they'll have to work out with Lanny in the building process. I don't think it's something that you can put a hammer to right this second. I think it's going to be in the building process that this takes place.
Lanny, I'm sorry, Nathan did have a text there from the gentleman with the company, and they do water wells in California and Georgia, I believe, what the text said there, so they are familiar with this. You know, the meeting we had, just kind of an introduction thing there 2 or 3 months ago. You know, they seemed very cooperative in that meeting. I would think that they would be going forward. That I don't have any reason to think that they wouldn't be. And any other questions?
So just to clarify, this performance agreement that we're discussing tonight, is the main intent of this to just approve the financial impact? Is this the purpose of this tonight?
Yes, so it's yes, and approving that in all documents. So the point was last Thursday we got a call saying we want to close. They want to close next week, and so we're like, holy moly, we only have so many times. So we got this in. Ed even was past the hour, and Candace and Ed opened it up for me and let me slide this in, and so we did. And I mean, they're already planning. They're calling our office, their events and their government liaisons. They're trying to do a ribbon cutting, which you guys will be invited to at the end of November of this month. So we're working towards all that. So it was a lot of had to do with closing by the 15th, 16th.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan, but my understanding was when the gentleman was here recently, that they wanted to get underway and start producing and growing product. Are we gonna, what is this timeline to get all this sewer and stuff updated and all that? And if you're gonna apply for grants in the past, I think grants are time consuming. If you're gonna try to get some grant help on this $2 million, upgrade that we're gonna need to do to get this sort of an operation up and viable, is it not gonna affect their timeline? I mean, cause we're not gonna be ready, I don't think, with the sewer in that length of time.
So Lanny can speak a little bit to the engineering, on timing for an engineering, but if we just had to do cash or go do a bond, however we needed to do it locally, if we just needed to be in-house, that can happen pretty quickly. So we know that their timelines are, they'd like to start grading within the next few weeks. They think that'll take about 6 to 8 weeks, and then they have specific greenhouse contractors, so they'll use a lot of subs around locally. But they have some very specific folks coming in who know how to build their systems, and they have them scheduled for January. And so we know that'll be about an 8-month build. I think they're talking about September, October for a full build out. So we would have about a year, a little less than a year to do all that.
I think that if we're thinking a grant, we're probably not thinking about getting a grant if we need to have the sewer done. The sewer's gonna be 18 months if we had the money to start doing it right now. So if they can, if I don't know if the system can take it until we get it done, but I doubt it can. But we'll have to work with Lanny on that. But if we get a grant, that's gonna be almost a year, 6 months to a year, and then it's gonna be 18 months after that, because we can't spend any money till we get the grant.
So, I mean, one of the things that when Lanny and Anthony, when we were all having a meeting, I mean, once the engineers started talking to each other, like, all right, well, let's do storage tanks. And there's temporary solutions. There's things that they could do phasing in. They were talking about staggering it throughout the day, having it in a storage and then released throughout the night, and, doing certain things to make sure we flow. So there are solutions there, and let the engineers handle it to bridge us until we need, that's assuming we need to get to the full-blown upgrade, $2 million upgrade.
And on the high end was where we were gonna have problems. On the lower end, we weren't gonna have any problems at all, and not even need the upgrade, but obviously we'll need the upgrade because hopefully we'll have more companies out there, in the future. But on their high end of what they were putting in, we were hearing that they would meter it, they would, do it throughout the day to allow us to accept it, if that was what it took, but they weren't 100% sure that they would even be close to the high end. Again, it was something that Lanny was going to have to talk to their engineers about as we kind of proceed through the process.
So, just one of the other things too, we could, when we control the land management of our acreage, one of the things we would do, we're looking at expanding some of our acres around town and our acreage, and so we could do a small. One of the visions we have is to do some smaller metal buildings because there's a need for that 5,000 to 10,000 square foot space. There's not a lot of it in Mount Pleasant, but we're losing customers around us because they have it. So we can be doing something like that, and those are minimal. Those are toilets flushing. Those are not big users. So we could work to plan out that area, as well, and then put the heavy water users where we know we have huge 12-inch water lines.
You mean on that remaining 16 acres?
Correct.
Do we have anything in place? I noticed here as I was looking at this on the real estate contract here, that this company will have, and I'm not going to read the whole part, but the gist I heard, together with improvement to the land and any and all water rights owned by seller on or under the land, and any right to install a well. So do we have anything in place as to how much water they could use from the well, or is that yet to come?
So, from what I understand from Lanny talking, there are physical limitations. There are residential wells that only do so many gallons per minute, and I think he said the largest ones like school districts might use were 150, 180 gallons per. So there are physical limitations to what they're going to be able to pump out, and they're going to have to, So, unless there's something I don't know about, a very large semiconductor water well somewhere.
So there are water wells that we use for municipalities that get, a couple hundred gallons a minute, and there's more than that, according to what they find in the aquifer out there. So they could have some high. What I was telling him is, residential wells can be, 15 gallons a minute, something like that. So It's just according to how you develop it, how deep you go, and the water quality, what you find.
I guess again, one of my questions would be, will there be anything in place that says that they have to use X amount of city water, or can they use 90% of well water if the aquifer out there is great enough where they can really, I mean, do we have anything in place that says they have to use any city water?
We like other cities will say you can't drill a well, so we can say you got to use 100%. In this industry, if they use city water in their production, they actually have to filter out the city's chemicals that we put in the water in order to put it down there, and then so that's another cost. So they, as Nathan said, they explained yesterday, that if they get raw water or well water, whatever, they don't have to do that. They can take care of that. And now that doesn't mean that some of the bad stuff that they're giving us won't be in there, but and that gets treated out, or what's the word? The solution to pollution is dilution. So you add more water to it to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I'm so quiet is because there's so many options that you can do. Even with the reverse osmosis, you can have selected membranes that only filter out chlorides, or other processes that'll do that. You can have selected membranes that go after certain metals and things. I don't know what they're really after right now.
We got to nail down what it is they're going to do and what they're going to do to get to this solution. So we're trying to answer questions we don't know, because we don't know what the amount of water they need, the amount of water they're going to use, and whether it's going to be rainwater or what. Those are things we got to work on. We don't have that yet.
Yeah, their water consumption is varied by amount of at least 10 fold over. So I've heard 30,000, I've heard 300,000.
20 gallons yesterday.
Right. So if you took it yesterday and did the math, you're getting 20 gallons a minute. So I don't know the answer to those questions yet. So it's really hard for me to say. I know that in general, well water in general is usually easier on the plant life, and of course rainwater is so much better for plant life. So they've got to be hedging their bets towards something that's more economical for them and gives them a better production.
What we did know when we left yesterday, and what we're saying tonight, is we need to be working, and we're working with their engineers and whatever to work on the water and the wastewater part. We'll bring that back. That'll have to be in another agreement once we figure that out. As far as the upgrading the plant, we'll know that too when we get done there. But the plant, the waste, the lift station and the grinder pumps we have in there are a Band-Aid at best, and probably it was before Nathan's time, my time. We should have put a decent sewer system out there in the first place, but that needs to be fixed. And this is probably going to be the part that puts us over the top on what's there. Something again that we probably should have had in place before veggies come.
Right, and I think when you start this off, your question about sampling and things like that, we can make sampling manholes where we just test their waste, and we can test it whether we want a grab sample or we want it to be, over time where we compile it, things like that, composite samples, as well as there are metering devices that we can put it in. But we're gonna have to know what their flow is to know how we're gonna do that, because you meter a full pipe with one way, you meter a partial full pipe with another mechanism. Those are just questions I've got to answer. I've got to get their numbers so I can answer the question.
I'll try to be brief. First of all, if they're going to be able to discharge water in a sprinkler type deal, like a clear water system, to discharge some of their wastewater, and I'm just talking, and I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying this is set in stone. It's just concerns I have as a city council person, a citizen that's serving on the city council. We invest a lot of money on behalf of the city and the citizens and for growth. And it's very expensive to put in proper sewage, lift stations, pipes, pumps, whatever it takes to handle wastewater. And if they're able to use a large percentage of their own water, either through capture or wells, and then are able to discharge quite a large amount of that. I just hope that we're not, I just hope this deal is a good enough return water-wise for what we're offering them. And two, I don't feel comfortable necessarily voting on something. I don't understand every word of this contract, because I haven't read it, nor have I gone for a legal review on it. But I just don't want to vote for something that would give them a cause of action against the city in the future because we did not do something that they need done to proceed with their water usage and disposition of the water. Because of timeline constraints, the processes that we go through, I just don't want to leave it open for an easy cause of action saying, you have a contract with us and we expect y'all to hop to it, because you're costing us this amount of money by not having it in place for us.
Question, Mr. Kerry, do you see any legal issues here?
Well, not at this point. I mean, as I say, a lot of it, yeah, I agree with Sherry. You don't have the answer to it. I mean, I understand that, whatever. But as far as us, being able to, we can do what we do. They know what they're going into. I mean, they know. And I think they've got in the performance agreement. Now, I didn't work on this performance agreement, so I'm just kind of like y'all. The board put that together with me. But I mean, as far as the deadlines or whatever, I mean, it's in there. I don't know if we have any exposure particularly under it, but we're gonna have to have some of these questions answered. So Lanny, because they're in the same boat, they can't move forward either until they get some of these questions answered themselves. I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. As far as if they need to get started, they've got to get started, just like anybody else in the building business. But no, I don't know if there's a whole lot of exposure. There's some pretty deadlines. You're talking about a year and a half. Some 20, 25 or 24, 25's in there places. So I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But I just think they're in the same boat with Lanny, because I don't know how they're going to make some of their calculations until they get some of these numbers together. That's a chance that they're taking on somewhere. I mean, they're saying water. I mean, we're surface water. We're not competing with them for use of groundwater, because we use surface water. I mean, I don't know if they've done test wells or what. There may not be any water out there. I don't know. There's places from here, Franklin County, you'd have to drill to China to find any water. I don't know, stuff like that. They're kind of betting on the come. But if they drilled any test wells, do you know of, Lanny, or anything for water?
I don't think they've drilled test wells out there, but I know there are other industries that have wells in that general area that are producing pretty good. So I would think they could get a well out there. I will say on part of your questions, I mean, I think it needs to be open this is for lack of a better term, a special waste. So maybe there's a special price for a special waste to make up for some of those concerns. I just see that there's a lot of different variables here as far as what you have to upgrade, how that affects our treatment. So it truly is a waste that we have to deal with a different way possibly. And if, they're taking part of this from the wells and they're discharging it to us, maybe there's an extra charge for something like that. I just think those are items that we need to address.
I think too, I felt comfortable after hearing what Kerry said, and also Nathan, in that the company has ways of discharging at certain times of the day or times of the week. And so if they can work with us, I don't know how much sewer they need that we can do, but promising they'll never go over and we won't have a problem, and that we can have 2.5 years to get a grant to pay for it and 1.5 years to design and build it, that would be the best. If they're saying, no, we need some improvements out there, we got to have this, and if we say we don't have that right now, and if that's an issue. But if they say, well, if you don't have it now, but you can have it in 2 years or a year, then that's probably gonna be okay for us. But then what I think Sherry said, Councilwoman Sproul said, everybody needs to understand and agree to that, so that we get down there and they said, oh, you're not performing for us, or if they say, no, we gotta have it in 8 to 10 months, which I don't think we can do, but we'd have to spend the money, bond it, and then get started right away. That's 18 months out.
Well, I've always been of the opinion that it's always better up front to have an understanding so that you don't have a misunderstanding. And I think all of us would be in agreement with that, just making sure that all these questions and concerns of the council would be addressed.
And we talked about maybe putting this on the next council agenda after we put it on here, but maybe we have a week we can come to an understanding, get some of these questions, not how much we need or whatever, but how far they could work with us if we go out 18 months or 2 years or whatever on getting that, and having Lanny tell us just how much we can take before we're to capacity and that kind of.
Well, Nathan's already said it. The company contact that he's in touch with is willing to work with us. That's a lot for me to hear that. If he's got an open book and ready to work with us, it's a two-way street. So we've already got his buy-in to work with us. So that's already a plus right there. So I think it's a good thing that he's already indicating right now. He's blowing Nathan's phone up in the middle of the council meeting, sending him a text, let him know, hey, we want to work with the city on this. We want to make this work. We can, this water thing, yeah, it's one piece of it, but look, it's bringing in all these jobs. Look what the jobs it's bringing into this community. It's not just the water. Water's just one piece of it. And they need water to do their production, to produce their product, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. What I'm looking at here is the jobs it's bringing to the community over a long term. We can work out the water issue, even if it takes 2 or 3 years to get a grant and to build it out the way it needs to be. But based upon what Lanny said, they're going to work with us, it sounds like, to work with the flows and releases of the sewer, et cetera. So, I mean, it's a yes vote for me.
How long is our option period? I noticed in here, I glanced at this, there's an option period. Do you know how long that is?
I'd have to go back. From the due diligence period, we a few weeks ago waived that, and we made it 10 days. We had it 30 days, gave them 30 days the month of November. They moved it, they wanted it to 10 days. They cleared that. I don't remember when the actual closing piece comes in, other than to say, you know, one of the things the company's expressed to me is, hey, Wall Street is now where there's a company doing something in Mount Pleasant, Texas. When those kinds of announcements are made, the companies, I guess just to go off of Councilor Chappelle's comments, like, they're still putting their water pieces together, not knowing necessarily, you know, they're talking to Lanny, they're betting on Mount Pleasant. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that we should be betting on a company that's willing to make an $85 million investment. And I think this specific water issue could definitely, and don't forget there are other I believe leverage points to negotiate and talk about as we continue to talk about this and we continue to make investment as a community to make sure that they're successful. That, you know, maybe not germane to the conversation of having them be able to close as soon as they're able to meet their deadlines with their contractors and the things that they have. We definitely want to, but like I said, Lanny's meeting with them. Well, I am too. We're meeting on Thursday to talk a little more about this. But when it comes to metering, they have been adamant that this is not, the well will not be sole source at all. And I don't think anyone's clear quite yet on how exactly what those percentages are. There may be like peak times and flows in different times of the day or different times of the year, with rainy seasons and, you know, monsoon seasons in spring and winters. So I think there's a calculus there that I would trust the company to fix because they want to be successable too.
Let
Well-
me add too here, just for the public, they don't always see what we see here. This is a hair under 40 acres, 39.77 acres in the Cypress Industrial Park is where this, entity would be going. And the purchase price for this property they're gonna be paying is $1,050,000, just for the public.
Seems to me that, I'm sorry, seems to me like they're making such a big impact or investment here that it may be a trade-off for the right to do the well and use that water and stuff. They could maybe squeeze maybe a couple more million out and we just do the sewer treatment upgrade.
I knew a couple of you wanted to say something, and but I want to go along with Henry a little bit too. Guys, we've got a company that's coming to Mount Pleasant wanting to put a major investment in. They've taken time and spoke with Lanny. They've taken time and spoke with Anthony. They've taken time and spoke with Nathan. They're not trying to hide anything. We've talked to them several times. They're putting some major money into Mount Pleasant, and this agreement does not exempt them. It's not a blank check to go, well, you can come to Mount Pleasant, do whatever you want to do. They still have to live by our standards of what we do. I mean, they can't just come in and, so you're not telling them, hey, you can do anything you want to do. You're telling them, come to Mount Pleasant, we'll work with you, y'all work with us, and I'm willing to do that tonight. I'm not willing to put it off another night. I'm ready for them to come here. I want them to know that we're ready for them to come here. Lanny and Anthony and Nathan, they put it together. The city as a whole has worked with them, and we've all put this deal together as a team, and I'm ready for Project Veggie to be a part of Mount Pleasant.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I just know that it's easier to fix things up front than it is after the fact. And I just have concerns because the water is a big part of their business, the use of it and the disposal of it, it's a big part of that operation. And it's gonna involve the city to a large degree to make those services available. And we have a duty to all citizens and all corporations and all businesses here to treat them equally, and not give and we can, like Lanny said, Lanny brought up a good point. We could maybe make a special fee because this is a special kind of discharge or wastewater because it's not all metered the way our rest of our customers are. And, they are making a sizable investment and they don't want to hit a brick wall themselves after they're $30-40 million into this to realize we have some sort of an issue. I'm not trying to create an issue. I'm trying to avoid one.
Sherry, you asked about the feasibility period or inspection, 120 days according to this contract.
Is after the council approves this to go forward? This is still not the contract, right?
End of the 120 days.
And I just got a quick text just to make sure from a cleanliness standpoint. Matt just mentioned, hey, please keep in mind that we grow lettuce, so we're a clean user. They're under USDA, and so he just wanted to make sure he addressed any concern about contaminated water.
Well, I think the only contaminants would be from whatever chemicals they might use.
Okay, council, I think we've had a great discussion on this, and I appreciate everyone's involvement in it. Do we have anyone else that wants to add anything? If not, then at this time, thank you, Nathan. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to consider the approval of a performance agreement by and between Mount Pleasant EDC and Grow Bounty Northwest LLC.
I'll move the approval of the performance agreement between Mount Pleasant EDC and Grow Bounty Northwest LLC.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Adams and a second by Councilmember Chappelle. Madam Secretary, would you record the vote, please?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
We have a 2-2 vote. I will be the tiebreaker tonight. I will vote, for this. So that we have a 3-2. With that, we will move on to our next item on the agenda. Thank you, council. Our next item on the agenda is the executive session. Pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the city council will recess into executive session, which is a closed meeting, to discuss the following: consultation with legal counsel regarding contract terms and provisions in an interlocal agreement for fire protection, Texas Government Code 551.071, and we will return after executive session. So at this time, we will convene into executive session. Thank you for being here. It's 8:56 PM, and we're returning after executive session. And at this time, there was no action taken in executive session. At this time, I'll make a motion and move that we adjourn.
Second that.
Thank you all for being here.